Okay, there we go. So say something. Say something. Hello.
Now I'm going to hear you. I
There
hear
you
you.
go. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening. All right, good stuff. Thank you. So now I know that when you log off, that you have to set up a whole nother one.
Well, no. No. Well, see, I don't know what. Are you using Zoom Meets?
Just zoom.com.
Zoom chat and Meet or something like that.
Oh no.
Because that's a different engine. And you have a lot easier control because it's only a one touch get in. You don't have to put in a ID number. You don't have
Oh, really?
yeah. Whoever receives your invitation can get into your meeting. And all they have to do is click in and it registers that they signed in. And they even have a place, I'm sure you do too, where you could look at the participants in your group and you'll see that it's you and I.
Yes,
So
I see that.
that's the same feature we have in the other one. So, but I think it's a better, well, we don't have to go through all of this. Sometimes people just too lazy to type in stuff, so they have one that's one-stop shop.
Well,
So
that's good. All right. So listen, after we're gonna do 15 minutes, the
I, saw,
first set.
I actually saw it. I did. It was in my email and my other phone.
Oh, okay.
So I
And
did
then
see questions. What is RJB, please, before I get in?
RJB is Raising John's Boy, which is the copy of my book, Now you didn't get this, so don't worry about that. I'm going to ad lib and work that out. So don't worry about that.
Well, I don't know what the perspective of your book was, but I do have an opinion about only a man can raise a man.
Excellent. So that's what I want. And I'm gonna say my perspective on it first.
Well, I think I mentioned it to you already, but I will reiterate it.
Okay, cool.
It's not true. That's a
No,
fallacy.
wait, we gotta wait. Wait, we're not set up yet.
Okay, I'm here.
All right, hold on. Let me
It's my first cigar of the day, so I let it go out and I light it again and let it go out and light it again. I enjoy a good cigar.
All right, here we go. Good evening, everyone. This is Nijah Howard. I'm a mental health professional speaker and coach and a new release author of Raising John's Boy, a self-help memoir that helps single mothers who are raising sons alone. My Empire Young Men Strong is dedicated to empowering, educating, and enlightening and engaging African American and Latino boys and men of color through media, consulting, and mentorship. Let's Talk Over T.E.A.S is a talk show that provides information, training, education, advocacy, and support for single mothers and single parents alike. And so I want to apologize tonight. Pastor Bruce is not going to be showing up. He had an emergency, but we do have a special guest who responded to the reach out. And after speaking to this wonderful guy, I am so happy to have him on the show. Please welcome Julius Walker. He is a program director over at the Arches Transformative Mentoring Program, where he helps young adults between the ages of 16 and 24 who are involved in the Department of Justice. Mr. Walker, thank you for coming on tonight at such short notice.
Thank you for having me, Ms. Howard. It's a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Tonight, our topic is, have Black men lost their luster? Before we jump into the conversation, what kind of tea are you drinking tonight? Because this is Let's Talk Over Teas.
Well, I'm partial to Earl Grey, room temperature. I don't like hot tea. Well, not that I don't like hot tea. I prefer room temperature tea because I know I can drink it as long as I like.
All right. All right. Well, tonight I am drinking, this is a new one for me. I'm doing a wild berry zinger. All right. Nice. Cheers to you. Cheers to you.
Everyone listening as well.
Absolutely. So again, this is just a conversation where we have intelligent dialogue, but yet we offer a quality-filled information that just hopefully when moms and dads who are full-time single parents hopefully they walk away in the evening feeling like they've gotten something out of it. They feel fulfilled, that they can go back and apply something to their life to make it a little bit better.
I
So
hope.
just based on, speaking with you, Julius, I feel like you um, really have a lot to offer in terms of your years of experience. You've even mentioned that you spent some time incarcerated. You work with children who are incarcerated. You're a full-time father. So you have a lot to share in regards to this particular topic of have Black men lost their luster? Um, First thing I guess I want to just ask you is, what is luster to you? What does that mean to you? So we can go into our topic.
Well, I guess we can use an array of definitions for it, but if I had to define it and make it as simple as I think in my mind, it's just that we've lost our place in the lives of our women, which is, some people would say, our shine uh, or our swagger. We've lost it with our women based on some of the, well, I don't know if it's always ill-conceived, but by some of the habits that we have in our life. So that's what I consider luster, that we've lost our place and our rightful place with our women, our Black
Okay.
women.
Why do you say that? Where do you feel that men have lost their luster at?
Well, I don't think it's a one-way street, but I'll put the onus right now on men and say that we get into relationships or situations. I'll leave it there, because a relationship has a connotation that it's going to last. We get in situations and they don't last. But we go in not knowing anything but looking for the pleasure, but not what the possibilities of building a life with this woman really looks like. Um, and we're reciprocated with that, a lustful response. And so we get caught up in that, and there's no foundation to build on, because we're both wanting something that we haven't expressed, but we're getting what we have expressed, and that's intimacy or sex, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, out of that situational moment, a child is born or conceived,
Mm-hmm.
and neither one, in my opinion, is really ready at that time. It happened because if we talked about Planned Parenthood, that wouldn't be one of the ways that you would plan a parenthood, having unprotected sex or giving into your lust. So we both have an onus in this, but for the man's part, I believe, and not just believe, I know, because I was that man at one point in my life. I love the act and I love the intimacy, but I wasn't ready to be a dad. That I didn't want to. I didn't have the greatest example in my life, even though I had a father there every day. So that's not what I wanted, but I wanted all the other trimmings. And sometimes women pick men who are like their fathers, and get the same result sometime. And I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay. Well, the first thing I kind of, and it does, that does answer my question. But there's a couple of things I want to fall back on. First, let's talk a little bit about just where this probably stems from, right? Because we can all go into speculations of what we think it might be, and our experiences. But let's go back a little bit, because I'm all about helping men of color to rise to that next occasion, right? How do we get them to be better? Where's some of the root causes stemming from? So because of my background in mental health, I tend to like to go towards, the different theorists and, the stages of development. So I think about psychosocial development in Erickson, and how he went through the different stages. And part of his development is he believed that with the different stages, if you didn't complete a particular stage, then you were stagnant there. You were paralyzed and you couldn't really move forward. So in the first stage of his stages is trust and mistrust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which happens as an infancy. And so, have you ever seen a situation where, like when you leave a baby somewhere and then you go away And when you come back, that baby's face illuminates the room like, oh my God, you came back. You know,
Yeah.
that beautiful face that you see. Have
Yeah.
you experienced that?
Uh, well, in a profound way, I remember the day I walked out of prison, and my daughter and two grandchildren were there, and the smiles and the looks on their face. It was just beyond. For me, it was one of those aha moments, one of those defining moments of my life that I was loved, that I
Yes.
was wanted. So that look resonated in many ways to me. However,
Yes.
may I just go back on one of your points?
Yes.
um,
Well, let me
yes.
just make a point really quickly, Mr. Walker. The point that I wanted to make with what I was saying was that when you see that beautiful face illuminate when you walk into a room, you've developed that level of trust, right? That child just was able to trust you because when you walked away, you actually came back. And so, can we think about the impact that could potentially have on our babies when we say goodbye, and what happens when you don't come back? Can you imagine what happens to that small child on the inside and how they begin to internalize that, right?
Not to be too philosophical about it, but the reality is that most of the young men that I work with are of that exact mind. I work with a lot of broken young men whose fathers have abandoned them, and they seem to perpetuate that same attitude, that same lack of drive or connection or connectivity with those things that are supposed to mean something in a child's life. Um, so uh, goodbye is a hell of a thing to say to anybody because it's final, at
Absolutely.
least in the mind of the person who hears it.
And
To
so,
be, I'm sorry,
no,
please.
go ahead.
So for the one who gets the opposite of that and gets a return, sense of that smile is definitely one related to you didn't fail me. You made my wish or my dream come true. There's daddy or there's mommy, because the abandonment happens on both sides. But when that comeback, I cannot imagine that child having a feeling of, I believe in life again. Uh, I'm fed with so many things that feed into this stereotype of my life. But what I believe is that my daddy or my mommy is there. And when they come back, it just validates all of those things that you held dear to you. You may not have expressed them to your friends. You may have just played it off in your community like, I don't care if he's there or she's there or not. I'm okay. But when it really happens, it just reinforces or validates a feeling that we hope for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted to just give a little bit of a foundation of what happens when the parents who we trust and depend on, they fail us, and how that internally stays within us. And as we grow into adults and we have birthdays, we're still pretty stagnant because of the lack of trust that was established early on in our lives. So a lot of times you're going to find that young adult men, as well as uh, uh, from boys all the way up to men, you're going to find that there's going to be always be a sense of identity issues, issues with uh, competency and self-esteem, due to the fact that in their early stages, there was some kind of trauma or a rupture that made their stage incomplete, and they weren't able to finish it. So as men, as they grow up, there's still there's a little boy in there that still needs growing and developing. So we have a lot of grown men who are walking around with suits and ties on, or looking grown, making multiple babies and playing this big daddy role, but they don't know how to really perform, right? So how do we get men to understand that, and just speak from your own experience, that making multiple babies with multiple women is unacceptable? That's just one of the things that I want to talk about. How do we address this situation?
I would 100% agree with you that it's unacceptable. However, let's not overlook that it is a fact. And that's where we have to work it from, and that's where you have to start dealing with it from, the fact. Sure, it's unacceptable, it shouldn't happen, but the reality is that it happens, and it's still happening, and it will continue to happen. And I'm gonna say where the answer lies at in my heart and in my mind, and this is not an excuse, it's a fact. Um, we've only been paralleling what we've seen always, generation to generation. And there's a beginning historically where this began. And that is on the plantations after we were taken captive. And I don't want to make this a black or white. I'm talking about a specific issue that is very permanent in our communities. We've taken a lot of black men, and I can only speak as a black man, and I can speak as a man on other issues, but as a black man, I look at my history and I realize that I'm only copying what I've seen. And my father probably copied what he's seen. And this is what we've internalized as a normal way of life. And sadly, it's not all black men, but there are some who've had this disenfranchisement from the nuclear family structure as they see it on Ozzie and Harriet. And you got the mom, the dad, the 2.2 kids, and in the garage. We see it on TV, but it's not the life that we see in our life. And most of that is because we've imitated what we've learned. And for some reason, a lot of us men don't want to learn anything else, but a lot of us actually do. And those are guys who make a turnaround in their lives and become better men, better fathers, better role models. And there are quite a few.
Absolutely.
But what we see is what we know. And what we know is what we personally experience and what we see perpetuated on the news every day. This person left this again. We got 30,000 women on welfare, and there's no daddy taking care of the baby. This is part of our story. It's a bad part, but it's a natural part of our story. But
does this part of the story ever end though? Does it get to a point? When does it get to a point where, because listen, I understand that it's psychosocial. I understand that there's slavery issues, and it's prehistoric, and we have, men who were dragged out of the household. It's systematic, right? You have the justice system where men are taken to prison, or their crime, violence, mental health, addiction. There's so many different facets of reasons why men of color are out of the home. 60% of women are head of household. So when does it get to a point when the black man says, okay, I see my daddy did it. He did it to me. My grandpappy did it to him. His granddaddy did it to him. His grandpappy did it to him. I'm going to stop this generational curse right here, right now. And so that my son knows my name. And when he wakes up after I leave the house, he knows that I'm coming back. I'm not talking about the fathers who are doing well, who get to that first stop, right? I'm talking about those that it takes a little bit longer, right? How do we stop those that it comes when you hit older? Let's bring it in a little bit. So how do we get to that point?
Okay, so earlier you mentioned the stages that Erickson alluded to, okay? And I agree with you 100%. But that also begs us to understand what Maslow was trying to infer as well in his hierarchy of needs, okay? If those basic needs aren't met, all that on top is never gonna materialize, all right? And for most Black men, those needs aren't met consistently. Food, clothing, shelter, all right? They're not met consistently. And that's not an excuse, that's a fact. And if we use the theory of stages, you can't get to the next stage unless you have these met.
Absolutely. So let's say this. Let's say this, and I'm just for a moment. I just want to stop you for a minute because you're absolutely right. The Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the end of the day, those needs may not have been met for him, but it also may not have been met for her. But yet and still, she's the one taking care of your seed.
Well,
right?
I'm answering one part of your question because you're 100% right about that. I'm saying whether it's the male or the female. I'm saying when those needs aren't met, we overcompensate sometimes. And that's why we have a proliferation of young men on the corner selling drugs to meet a need that hasn't been met in the normal and the most civilized way. You know, learning from home, learning values and things of that nature. They're not there. All right. And so, again, this is not a pass for men, because there's a saying, and I'm sure you've heard it. It says, when you know better, you do better. So there's a lot of young men out here who know better. They choose not to do better. And now we have to shift a little bit of responsibility to the female. All right. If you only fish in one pond, and every time you fish in that pond, you almost get the same result. And then you've heard the phrase some women make, and I guess men do too, definitely, men ain't shit. Okay, yes, that's 100% true. But the other part of that truth is those men who aren't shit are only not shit to you, because that's the kind of guys that you meet who ain't shit. Because there are some guys out there who are good men.
Well, let me just say this. Let me just say this. First of all, I'm a firm believer that I don't believe men are shit. Okay. I believe that we have psychosocial issues that are dealing with past trauma from mommy, from daddy, from history, from slavery, from the news, that impact how men perform. And if you're not trained or shown how to perform better, or establishing some kind of healing in your life, like counseling or therapy to help cleanse out some of those root causes, then your behavior will only dictate how you feel about yourself. And so before we move forward, I want to address something, because you're right. And I agree with you when you say 100% that if women are attracting this particular type of guy, it may be because of something that maybe she's doing incorrectly, for sure. Right?
That's that again, and this on my part is very equal in responsibility in this, because that's the same thing with men, because they use the same expression for women. All right, but they always meet the same women, or like-minded women, in the same places they met the first one who wasn't anything. So rather than try something new, we keep going back to what's familiar, and usually what's familiar is the hurt, and usually is the disappointment, because we're going to the same place.
Okay, so how do we, let's start working on some kind of solutions, Julius, because you work with this population between young men between 16 to 24 years old. And again, everyone, we're talking to Mr. Julius Walker. He works with the Department of Justice with a program, the Arches of Transformative and Mentoring. And we're talking with him this evening about, have Black men lost their luster? And it's a very good dialogue thus far, but I want to get to some solutions about how do we get Black men to really regain that sense of shine where they are no competition for anyone. But right now, it's almost as if, a lot of women are looking outside of their own race and culture because Black men aren't bringing anything to the table. Not all, but many. And so how do you get to that point of, start listening to the cries of your woman, and stop disqualifying the positives that she and the children are bringing to the table? How do we get young Black men to start listening to the women who are in their lives?
Okay, so I've read quite a bit about you, and I believe we have a associate in common. And I've done my research on you as a Black woman, and I know that you raised a son by yourself. Okay, and am I correct so far?
You are correct.
Okay, and from all accounts that I've received, you have a young Black man, who could very well fit into the category of an ain't shit guy who happens to be the shit. He's not involved with drugs. He's not in the criminal justice system. He goes to school. I mean, and he's doing this without the benefit of a father in the home. However, trust that you guided him in the right places, because in the places that you guided him, there were men there who were good role models for him, because he turned out pretty damn good, by all accounts. So I don't have the answer for that, but I can say for the ones who are caught in this syndrome of being a single parent, I would really look to the successes of single parent mothers, even though we can expect and hope for a change in our Black men. Some of the jobs that you guys are doing, when I say guys, I'm talking about you single mothers, it's fantastic in my book. Um, uh,
And and
Unfortunately, I have.
and that's appreciated, right? That's humbly appreciated, and I appreciate you doing your research on me and finding those things out. And you're absolutely right. My son is a young man, and he's doing fantastic, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so adamant about really providing some education, some training, and support to single mothers who are raising sons, in particular African American, because my goal is to reduce the single parent household rate for tomorrow by helping mothers who are raising sons today. And the hope is that young men will grow up saying, you know what, I have a conscience. I have I'm willing to take accountability and responsibility for what comes my way. No excuses. I'm going to take full responsibility for, this child is here now. I'm going to take responsibility. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to disrespect the mother of my children. I'm not going to call her baby mom or call her a hoe or a tramp. I'm going to stand up and have full integrity for the situation in which I created. So how do we get men to a point of, and you can get to this point, how do we get men, young men, to start to realize that baby mamas and girlfriends, they are deserving of respect. They are deserving of good quality respect.
Well,
If you know,
again, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer, because from house to house, from kid to kid, there's numerous variables that's included in their individual lives. Collectively, we can say, do this, do that, but inside of each home, we have a different dynamic. So how do you get young men? Well, through my program, I'm probably innovatively, I'm innovative. I don't hold to traditions in communicating with young men. Before we can bring them to a level, we have to be able to meet them where they're at. I think sometimes us mentors and men who mean well, we automatically expect them to understand everything that I'm talking about. Get a job, open a bank account, pull your pants up, blah, blah, blah. Well, number one, this is an analogy that I hope you hear me clearly. The process goes like this. Are you familiar with the farming process? That in order for a crop to grow, you have to first plant a seed.
absolutely.
Right? And I think that we do that in abundance. But what we fail to do is go back and nurture that seed. So instead of nurturing that seed, we give them a verbal menu. This is what you should do from now on. And it's not being reinforced. It's just being said. And we like kids and young people, these young men, they don't want to hear that shit. They don't want to hear, all of this where you're at, because they're not there yet. But when you have yourself, and I use myself in all of my cases with my young kids, I was one of those kids. I'm a dad of 4 children, and there's 3 mothers involved. However, my relationships with those women didn't end when the child was born. I wasn't ready to marry, but I've never abandoned my kids. I've always been in their lives. And the mothers know each other. I don't call myself unique. I call myself a real man, though, because I made those babies, and they're mine. They're not just hers. They're ours. And so my responsibility lies in that. They keep me now centered, even though today they don't need me. They've grown, but they keep me centered on what a man is supposed to look like. And I try to present that. Not when I don't give up my swagger, because I'm about real life. I wear a suit, I wear a hat, I wear jeans, I do whatever I need to do to make my message clear to the young people that I talk to.
Let me
I
ask you a
don't know.
question.
Yes.
Go ahead. I just want to ask you a question. when you say what a man looks like, what does a man look like to you?
To me, um, I'm gonna not by any way of braggadocio, and I'm only gonna talk about me because I believe that I am moving into my trueness as a man, not just as a father, but as a friend, as a person in my community, a person in my church or whatever. In my church, speaking for me, but my impact is not felt in one place. As a man, every one of us, as men and women, should leave a footprint that someone can speak well about. And that's my goal. And so the things that I do them because I know I'm not just doing them for me. I know that I have the ability to impact the lives of others, and I don't take that lightly. And with the men that I work with, I work with fatherhood and mentoring programs here on Staten Island, where I live, and I work with them diligently. And you know, we who have been where they're at and have now can show what it looks like if you want to elevate. It's an inspiring thing, but it has to be done consistently, not a one and done deal, which is a lot of times is what a lot of our young guys get. They get a lot of dictates, a lot of you should do this and do that, and they don't see it in action because they can't identify with who's telling them.
Right. Well, thank you for that answer. I'm gonna tell you what my perception of what I think a man is, and I agree with you in many ways in terms of, you know, it's your community service, it's how you're impacted by others, is what you leave behind your children, and just having a legacy of good things that people can talk about you. Before I even tell you what my definition of a man is for me, uh, when did you come to this realization? You know, around what time in your life do you feel you was able, the light bulb went off that, okay, this is what a man is supposed to be like?
Well, there's a saying that deprivation breeds desperation. Not necessarily. Desperation can also be a cure for you to get to learn how to think better and think differently. And for me, that time, it's not a bragging point, it's a fact. It happened while I was incarcerated. When I started seeing my family die around me, and I could not be there with them. And I made my mind that shit has to change. If I ever get out of here, I'm sorry if my profanity offends anyone, but I keep it real, and I'm hoping I'm not offensive. But for me, it was during my incarceration when I started understanding who I was, not what I was, but who I was. Because what I was a convict, a black man, broke, blah, blah, blah. But who I was, okay, I don't want to get too philosophical. There's a saying right now during this coronavirus that, you know, they talk about essential workers, right? And they're essential in this pandemic. But my take on it, and I do agree, they are frontline essential workers, but each of us is essential to someone, all right? And so if I embrace that I'm needed, not just tolerated, then I'm going to work to duplicate that feeling of feeling good about myself. And so
Sure.
that's what I started practicing in prison, you know, and talking to brothers like brothers, not like we fellow convicts, but we are young entrepreneurs or young educators who just haven't had a chance to get into our niche, but it's there. And for me, the process started in prison. And you know, we could say a lot of bad things about prison, but I'm going to say that's one of the great things I got out of prison is how to be a man, not a
Okay.
killer, not a thug, but a man.
So one of the messages, and thank you for sharing that. And I can only imagine how many other men feel the same exact way, that once they became incarcerated, that's when they really began to identify who they was as a person and as a man. When I think about what makes a man from a woman's perspective, from my perspective,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just to throw some terms out there, someone that's loyal, someone
Mm-hmm.
that knows how to be a ride or live. All right, I don't believe in ride or die. I don't need you to die. I want you to ride and live with me. Okay, someone that's loyal,
Okay.
someone that has integrity, someone that understands the meaning of trust and honesty and standing for something, not just being on the fence. someone that is someone that has a good manners, right? That's what a man is to me, someone with manners, someone that understands right from wrong and understands that there's consequences for wrong behavior. You know, um, someone that has good character. You know, they do things that are of goodwill even when others are not watching them. That's what makes a good man to me. Someone who is trustworthy. You know, this way, when I leave $500 on the table, I know that when I come back, it's still going to be there. So these are just some things that I'm hoping that with that and with what you said can really help men understand that, you know, those are some of the qualifications of making a man. That's what makes a man become a man. Now, how do you feel about when you spend time? Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to go back to what you just said because, again, um, you gave a point of view about it, and I gave a point of view about it, and both of them are spot on. But I just want to make clear that I also believe that that's inherently true for women too. And again, I'm going to refer to you and your book and what I know. I'm sure there were times in this journey with your son, the frustrations and the things probably ran you up a wall. But
Absolutely.
you managed to rise. I think Maya Angelou said, but still we rise. You managed to be that person. So that's inherent in men and women to rise.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
But today, the reason why I'm focusing, because you're absolutely right, it's for men and women. But today's topic is, you know, how do we get the Black man to reclaim his luster? And so I really want to make sure that it is signified and glorified on steps on how to make a man who may be listening to this right now, how to get him to shine again, how to get him to, you know, come out of that dark space that he may be in. So how do you feel about therapy and counseling and mental health counseling? Have you ever done it? And, you know, what are your thoughts on it? And have you ever done counseling?
Well, I'll tell you, I am presently in therapy now. And here's the irony of what I'm about to also reveal, that my therapist is also my pastor, but we don't operate in therapy as pastor and parishioner. We act as therapist and therapy. And so I speak to him very forthrightly. I think I don't say I have a whole bunch of problems, but there's still issues in my life that I still need to come to grips with and understand. And this is why I seek an outside direction and then my therapist adds that to my life. And I do recommend that men stop being so people, not just men, because a lot of us have a, you know, aversion to therapy like we're crazy. No, it doesn't denote craziness. It denotes I want to build my life. I want to do it right. I want to do it with some understanding of who the hell I am. So yeah, I know that, you know, through therapy, this is a very elementary statement I'm about to make, but this is true. I know that therapy is not going to make me a rocket scientist or an engineer. All right. If I don't have that drive, then that's not even a consideration. But what is stopping me from fulfilling all of my things? And through therapy, some of the answers come to me, and they're not given to me. They come to me through the conversation that I have with therapist, because he doesn't advise me on anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I get
I'm glad
frustrated.
that I'm so glad you acknowledged that. I'm really happy that you brought that to the table. Because talk therapy is one of the key things that can help you to really, really unravel some of those root causes. And as we know, statistically, suicide and depression and anxiety are among the highest rates of mental health issues that succumb the African American men. So going to therapy is an amazing tool to take control of your life and take your life back. I
Well,
know
let me say something to you, please. And again, I much apologize for cutting you off. But
no,
when you speak, you inspire me to say something to a point that you made. You know, there's a saying that words paint pictures and pictures trigger feelings. All right. So when we hear the word therapist, a lot of us, because we're uneducated or unknowledgeable of that whole genre, we think, oh man, you got to be crazy to go to one of those. But the reality is that we use therapists every day. If you can look at some of these cultural facts, that a lot of you hear the fact that the barbershop is one of the most communicating places for men. And when they have a certain crew or a certain amount of people there that they know, they feel free to talk about issues that are in plaguing their lives. All right. And that's because we've gained a trust in those people. All right. So if you take off the title therapist and say, let me associate myself with someone who is not going to judge me because I voice my insecurities or my weaknesses. So we use therapy every day. We don't want to call it that because it connotates some kind of insanity or mental deficiency. So far from the truth. And I
Absolutely. Absolutely.
personally encourage men, if you can get a licensed therapist or someone that you trust enough that you're going to give him or her the most depth feelings of your heart, not for them to judge, not for them to even comment on, but so I can just say it out loud without judgment, without fear that I'm going to be looked at as a piece of scum or, a piece of shit.
Absolutely.
So therapy, we could take the word out and say, get a good friend, a real friend, not these transient people that you just, you got people you smoke pot with, you got people you drink with, you got people you party with, but you got somebody for every different thing. Find the one person that you could do all those things with the drinking and the smoking, but the things that you really want to do. If you could find that one, that's the person you probably learn to trust with your innermost feelings. So please don't look at therapy as some jaundiced thing or some taboo thing, especially for a strong Black man. Man, we need it more than anybody else right now. We're coming from a place of deprivation, emasculation, and you name it. You can put all of those things. Not an excuse, but a reality.
Right.
And those of us at that place or who have been at that place can probably benefit from being able to talk to somebody and keeping it real. If you got a tear to shed, if it ain't no about you a punk or you soft or whatever, you need to get this shit out of your system before you can move on to that next phase that Erickson talked about, or to get to that place that Maslow talks about to reach your self-actualization. But you got to get rid of junk before you can put new stuff in.
Absolutely.
And therapy is one of the avenues that I would strongly recommend, especially to my brothers, Black men, men, period. Because our egos, I'm going to tell you, just keep it real, our egos, man, we don't know how to put them things under subjection sometimes. We don't want to be looked at as soft. I come with a certain swagger. I want you to see me differently. But I am different. I have 9 or 10, each of us, personas that we exhibit every day.
Absolutely.
All right? Those are the true us. And to find a partner, a woman, in this case, finding a woman who has those same abilities to let it all hang out and grow. I think I had a conversation not too long ago about great men. And I don't believe great men are the person you meet the day you meet them. The greatness has to be realized at some point. And I believe for a great man to come about, a great woman really must support him. I don't believe that there's any great man who hasn't had a great woman, whether it's his wife or that confidant that gives him a sense of, I'm okay the way I am okay. And they'll validate that. And in return, you'll validate her greatness. Because you can't have a great man unless there's a woman who has a greatness that she can share with her man. But I don't believe greatness starts from the beginning. It's something that has to be acquired. You could be a good man, and I think there's a lot of good men out there. And sadly, the ones who give us the worst name, and I'm not putting them down, it's just the reality because I was one of them, is there are some good men out there. But if we go into our relationships, and I hope I'm not going too far off your point, if we go into our relationships expecting greatness from the beginning, then we're setting ourselves up for a great disappointment, because that greatness in anyone has yet to be realized. And we could use cliches that no man is an island, so he needs others, and she needs others to make their greatness great. Listen,
So,
this is
I just want to really quickly. I just want to, because I want to wrap this up now. And we've had such a wonderful dialogue about, really helping the man of color, the Black man, to get back his luster. Um, and to your point, you're right. We're all a work in progress, right? And when you come together, you make each other stronger together. That's the hope, right? um and I'm hoping that when men and women both who are listening to this tonight will know that, create yourself whole first before you jump into a relationship hoping that another person will create your wholeness. I think somewhere along the lines, that's probably where I think a lot of our relationships fail, because so many people are jumping into relationships hoping that the other partner will heal them. And really, you should go out there and get yourself better first. Like you said, Mr. Julius, go get your therapy, sit in a chair somewhere, really unravel some of those deep rooted seeds that were planted from years ago, abandonment issues, rejection issues, daddy issues, and really handle that. But I just wanted to close up tonight and just ask, just say thank you so much for being on Let's Talk Over Tea. I didn't see you drink not one sip of tea, so you was really going in tonight.
you must have blinked your eyes because half of my tea is gone. May I just close out with one point about the luster?
Yes.
And this is an encouragement statement I want to make to the men listening.
Yes.
It's not a loss of luster. We all have that luster there. Have you ever seen a dusty lamp?
Yes.
And if you dust it off, it shines. The shine has always been there. We just got to take this top stuff off. We always have the luster. It's there. We just got to shine it up a little bit. And you'll know what needs to be shined. Each man that's hearing me, you know what needs to be worked on. You don't need a therapist to tell you that. You can self-motivate yourself to want to be a better man. You don't have to get somebody else to tell you. You already know you're a good man. Be a better man. Shine it up, and your luster and that shine will come back.
All right, amen. That's excellent. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
You're quite welcome.
Just to close us out, I just want to say, thank you to you. It was a pleasure having you a part of my show, and I do hope that you come back to Let's Talk Over Tea. This is a wonderful topic, over conversation. But I just want to say that before we close out, I do believe that every child deserves a happy, healthy, and balanced home. So if you are a young man out there, be focused on, before you think about sleeping with anyone and creating babies, establish a relationship, get close to that. We'll talk further. This is a whole topic that can go on and on and on and on, but I just want to say thank you. And before we go, I do have self-care. I still have some more self-care starter kits for single moms that are out. We're sending them out every day, so please get your box. These are wonderful, wonderful gifts to just give that special someone, let her know that she is special, she is necessary. The box are going for $60. Inside, we have some beautiful gifts, but I cannot reveal it unless you want your copy. Also, books can be, books are being sold everywhere. Books are sold. Raising John's Boy, mascotbooks.com at Raising John's Boy. So I just want you guys to know that that's out there as well. And when we strengthen our boys and men, we stabilize our girls and women. So again, thank you, Mr. Walker, and I hope to see you again. Take care.
It's my pleasure, and I look forward to it.
Awesome.
Enjoy your evening.
You too.